Get cash for clothes at Plato's Closet in Douglasville and Newnan. It's so easy. Recycle, earn cash, repeat. We pay cash on the spot for your trendy, gently used clothing, shoes, and accessories. At Plato's Closet, we buy all seasons, all day, every day. It's time to clean out your closet and cash in. Bring in your denim, graphic tees, athletic wear, shoes, handbags, and more. Sell your styles to Plato's Closet for cash. Then do it again. Plato's Closet in Douglasville, off I-20, exit 36, and in Newnan on the Newnan bypass.
Southern Sports and Talk. Newnan, Sharpsburg, Franklin.
The House of Light brings clarity to your soul, offering a safe space for healing through our compassionate practitioners, services, classes, and wisdom, plus the tools to support you in our retail space.
Hank Arnold here from Coweta Force. Coweta Force is Newman's own addiction recovery support center. We exist to provide recovery support services for individuals and family members who have been impacted by addiction. Our services are no cost, and all of our information is available on our website at www.cowetaforce.org or follow us on Facebook.
Are you looking for guidance and direction? Stop on by the House of Light Tuesdays from 12 to 3 and have tea and tarot with Christy. The House of Light is located at 29 Jackson Street in Newnan, Georgia. Call 470-414-6711 for more information.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
It's now time for the House of Light presents The Wisdom Cafe, each and every week at this time on 99.1 FM WQEE. Here's this week's special.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rick Chambers with the Wisdom Cafe, and on the menu today is New Age and Community, and our guest here is Christine, who's been on the show before, but welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back. It's been a while. A lot of changes have happened, good changes.
Yes.
We're growing big.
So Ryan was introducing me as Mr. Wisdom or whatever, but the first thing, the first step in wisdom is like kind of realizing that you're not wise. That's the whole, like kind of, that's where wisdom begins. It doesn't begin from thinking like I'm wise, but it does begin with philosophy. Even means the love of. It comes from a Greek word, philo is love. So it's love of wisdom. So to love wisdom is not the same thing as being wise, but it is valuing wisdom. And then in a way we'll look today at, well, so how does wisdom connect with House of Light?
Right. Okay, awesome.
And then how does House of Light connect with this idea of community? We could subtitle the show Herding Cats.
Yes, herding cats. Yeah, wisdom, just a little saying, when you're in your 20s, you think you know everything. And, you just got the world in the palm of your hands. And then the older you get, the more you realize you don't know. And I guess that's kind of the wisdom, is that you're realizing that there is so much more out there than you thought in the 20s, when you were in your 20s.
Yes, so the goal is, as you age, to keep on learning.
Yes.
And that's hopeful and kind of encouraging for people, I think. You never really arrive.
Yes. I don't know if it's a goal for everybody. I think it's so easy to stay in our comfort zone of thinking we know everything. And then something comes in there and goes, oops, I didn't know that.
Right. I really appreciate House of Light and Donna for sponsoring this or making this possible, because I've been in Newnan since 1996, and Donna has been a part of this community from the very beginning, and especially with the community had a home, and then there was no home for years, and it kind of dispersed, and now it's this idea of house of light.
Right.
And I think that's made a tremendous difference in helping people get back together and continue. And when I say community, we've never really had a name or anything. It's really hard to describe to people. But I've been thinking about this term, the New Age or New Age movement. What do you think about that? Do you identify with that or not identify with it, or kind of this whole term?
I like the New Age. You know, I'm always looking forward. I should be looking back a little more than I do, but I'm always out to see what else is out there. That's kind of been a theme that I look at, because, you know, you can always chop things up in different ways. So, especially taking, you know, like an old concept and reworking it and calling it New Age, you know, that's great. I mean, you don't want to kind of go backwards.
Yes, and so we can frame the show today using one of Gandhi's. Since we're talking about wisdom, we'll use one of Gandhi's quotes of when he was trying to change society, and it was first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Then they join you.
Or then they join you.
Yeah.
And so there are two variations on that quote.
Yeah. Where are we in this stage?
Well, that's why I mentioned, like, kind of where do you think we were in the 90s when
fighting, I think.
With this idea of a new age, in many ways, it might have even been, it was either being ignored or laughed at. And so something important about all identities and all labels is they're often coined by the dominant culture or by people who are not involved in a movement. Even Christianity, Christians didn't in the beginning like identify themselves. There wasn't like an identity and organization in a way. They were labeled by the Romans because they had to find a new way of like grouping these people who were different
than they were.
Yes.
So the main people, the default people, didn't have a name for themselves.
And that's kind of consistent always in societies. Nerds didn't call themselves nerds.
Yeah.
See? Whatever it is,
right.
it's kind of the dominant society. And then the dominant society never has a name for themselves, but they name everybody else. So there was this... And there'll be a lot of names, and then a certain name will stick. But I know especially in the 90s, the term New Age really emerged. Now, it's much older, and a lot of people may not even realize where it comes from. But so in the beginning, it was this idea, well, it's just a phase. It's just a fad, that it's going to come and go. And in society, we never know what's going to come and go. Right. In my own history, I can think of, there was this, like, hip-hop was new. And then was it a fad that kind of came and went, or did it totally change? And then what happens, new things sometimes change the prior culture or the previous culture. And I think that's what's happening with whatever New Age movement meant.
New Age. That's interesting, because you can kind of overlay that with so many different things.
Exactly.
You know.
That's what I like to do,
right.
so that people can kind of relate to it or understand it.
Right.
But it was and very often an identity is what's the like a demeaning term or a cut or an insult. Identity words often begin as a way almost of making fun of these strange people who are doing strange, different things.
Yeah, they're not abiding by the social norms.
Yes.
According to their eyes.
Yes. But almost the opposite of fad. The term New Age actually came from astrology, which is also often made fun of, or used to be much more made fun of. And from astrology and age, as the sun kind of moves during solstice, the sun moves from year to year. And so if you kind of make a clock out of the circle, the horizon, an age, so 1/12 of the clock is 2,000 years.
Wow.
And so astronomers begin to, what's actually happening, and I heard this, but I had no idea what it was associated with, that they're looking for me, I'm afraid,
they're coming to get you, Rick.
like kind of saying these strange things.
These New Age things.
Right? There was a time when that would have been a possibility. So this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So in the mid-late 60s, there was this song. It actually is from 96 until well into the 2000s. There was to be a shift, and astrologically we moved from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And so the scientific revolution took hundreds of years, like 200 years before it became mainstream. And it began as just a few people communicating with each other. They wouldn't have called themselves scientists. It kind of emerged over time. And it takes, these changes, big changes, take much longer than anyone imagines. That Christianity, there was the whole Roman Empire that was the known Western world. And there were 12 Christians that we know for sure, and then like kind of some surrounding people. But 500 years later, well, they were persecuted for 300 years, and then 500 years later, they're the dominant culture. Rome is gone, and Christians are the dominant culture throughout the West. Same thing with science. It took about 200 years for it to become the dominant way of looking at things.
So if you're looking back at Gandhi's quote,
yes,
the resistance, now they're becoming it or joining it or whatever the last one is.
Right. And what's very interesting, many of the very early scientists were into, in those days it was called esoteric, but they were into things such as astrology at the same time as they were into what we now call science. So these new things were there in the very beginning. Then, and we probably have to talk about this, like, well, I'm just familiar with this community in the 90s. Is it even fair to call it a community, do you think? Like, kind of, I think what's happening, did it start as a community or did it start as people's individual journeys? Did it start with individuals or did it start as a community movement, especially here locally?
Like in the 90s?
Well, it goes back like to the 1800s, but like kind of for here, I came here in the 90s. Right. And so even then, in the 80s, if you tried to do something in the field of yoga, there would have been much resistance.
Right, some kind of
and in the 90s, there was still a resistance, whereas today it is so everyday, common, accepted.
Right.
In the beginning, it was seen as a threat in anything in this whole field.
Anything new, right?
Yes.
Is that because they were in community and anything outside of what they did, I guess, was not
right.
known or not didn't have a place for it?
Right. So we won't get into it today, but its roots really go. Their roots in the hippie movement in the 60s. The origins of what are today called New Age. There were some precursors, but it's very much in line with everything hippie. So there was the culture and the counterculture. But I think the most important thing for us to talk about locally is how most individuals, like kind of what brought individuals to this. And I would say most people came because of what we found once I started talking with more and more people. One of the most common reason people were in this community was a chronic health problem that was not adequately treated, satisfactorily treated by the mainstream, what we'll call like modern scientific Western medicine.
Kind of what insurance pays for.
And this was before insurance and medicine were so entwined. That had to do with the 80s and everything. But of course, yes, if there's not a way to pay for it, it's not legitimate. Right. It certainly was not within the legitimate. But it's also the way people think about things. And so there was a whole group of people that might have been very conservative, very much within the culture, but they were this wasn't their first choice. They were kind of driven to this by physical, especially a chronic illness or something else. Yes.
Out of necessity.
Yes. And
survival.
And so one branch of the New Age movement was alternative health. And that would be a very isolated, very lonely, kind of when you're dealing with a chronic health problem, how isolating is that? And how lonely is that? And how frustrating is it if you can't find relief or find help or feel like you're on the right track? I do want to say, kind of what's happened over, my adult life, and I kind of tell the story this way. Growth and change will happen. There's the dominant way of approaching things, and there's a reason modern medicine is the dominant. Its credentials are excellent, especially with germ theory and with certain kinds of problems. But there were certain kind of problems it was not so good with. But in the beginning, when there's something new, you almost have to choose one or the other. And so there was modern Western medical help. Then there was alternative health. Then as people began to work with it more and more, it became complementary. And now it is integral or holistic, which means you don't have to reject the Western medicine in order to practice this. They're no longer seen as opposites where you have to choose one or the other. You can choose both and try to get them to work together. Because I think it's extremely dangerous to reject modern Western medicine altogether.
Right. It's necessary, and it's part of the picture.
So one group of people came because of dealing with chronic health problems. Another branch of the New Age is spirituality. And one group came because they had difficulty or didn't resonate with or felt outsiders from traditional faith traditions and religion. And you could see, again, kind of this similar, in the beginning, it's seen as an alternative to or the opposite of. And then there's a way of seeing them as complementary. And then there may even be, we may be moving into a place where they can be reintegrated. That I really want, one of my main roles within the community has been to say, you don't have to choose between New Age spirituality and a faith tradition, Christianity or Islam, Judaism. You can integrate them. They used to be seen as opposites, which was why there would have been resistance to many of these things. And there are differences, but I very much advocate you can stay within your faith tradition and be open to new things.
So you can go to your church and still, in your mind, have your own belief and be okay with going to church.
Oh, that it's not against like church and faith. So there was the group of people doing it along health. There was a group of people doing it for spirituality. There would be another whole like branch of the New Age that are people that are just curious and open. That kind of, what is this about? What is that about? Does this work? Or even the willingness to try something new. So curiosity, both like curiosity is a motivation, pain and suffering is a motivation. And all of these people ended up here. And then we locally, there was a store, Millie's store was Books of Light. And again, opening that store was resisted by a lot of people. And very often, then they fight you. If people are rejected or outcast or questioned or distrusted, it tends, you begin to kind of hang together as a community. We began to hang together, formed Joyful Being, and Wisdom Cafe was a discussion group that went on for 6 or 7 years that's being revived in a new form. And that's kind of the local story. Another interesting thing, people think, like, what generation is this? See, it's been around a long time. There are many people that are like a generation before me. I'm in my 60s, and they were in this community in a way, and they knew each other and kind of said, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. So, and then it goes all the way to very young people and children.
There's a lot of roots here in this city of homes here.
Yes.
People have been around for a long time.
Now, I was involved in something that called the Occupy movement, and people said, well, it doesn't have leaders, and what is it all about? The difficulty in forming a community is there's not a shared belief system. You can't say, you can't say we're all doing this, nor can you say we all believe this. There's nothing you have to do. This is why I say it's like herding cats. In one way, it's not unified. In another way, there is some commonality, but it's hard to put words on it.
Right. I guess everybody's living their life, but yet we all have to kind of move together. You know, we have to stop at stop signs. If we didn't agree to stop on stop signs, it might be a bit disastrous.
Yes. So we're right on the edge, and I think Donna is encouraging this. This show is encouraging this. There's a variety of practitioners. There's a variety of modalities, especially within the alternative health world. This term like modalities, but I begin to see nowhere offers like all the spiritualities, all the health modalities. And really, that can only be offered at the community level, which is why I love radio. Radio, like, kind of transcends all of includes all the modalities, includes everything, but transcends everything at the same time. It goes out to everyone.
Right.
And you don't have to be a particular belief system or anything.
Anybody can,
to benefit by radio.
Right, anybody can listen to it.
Right? And yet, all of the research is saying, like, anxiety, depression, you hear community all the time in marketing. Maybe this is the beginning of how do people put their individual journeys with belonging to a community, but one that maximizes, like, diversity. And allows differences. So that's kind of the direction that we're going in, I think.
That's so intricate.
Right? It's always been with our discussions. People are a little thrown off because I kind of refuse to have hard and fast rules. Mm-hmm. There's not a doctrine. There's not rules. You're to come, and I've often phrased it this way. The byline of Joyful Being was alive and connected. Mm-hmm. And that means we're trying to optimize integrity, individual integrity, and belonging. I heard Ryan sign off with peace, love, respect. Like, that fits.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
He's been listening to you for a while now.
Well,
he gets it.
That's a neat thing about this. I tell people, look for what is emerging. Mm-hmm. So this is happening. Not nobody is in charge. This is what's like blows people's minds about. Nobody's in charge. Look, it's happening. It's emerging within the culture. Mm. Nobody's organizing it. It's organizing itself. Mm-hmm. Look for where there's emergence and convergence.
Wow. I think what you'd said just a second ago about individual journeys.
Yes.
With
community and relationships and belonging. Belonging's been the hard part. How do you belong if it's not built on like rules, doctrine?
With diversity.
Yes.
Like those just seem so tricky to work. In
some ways they're like a seesaw, and that's been the problem in society. Right. But we're trying to do both at the same time.
Right. I think there would be we could discuss about that for a long time.
So perfect. Join us again for Wisdom Cafe, brought by House of Light. Thank you, Donna.
You've been listening to the House of Light presents the Wisdom Cafe on 99.1 FM WQEE. The House of Light, a wellness center at 29 Jackson Street here in Newnan, is a place for people to relax and find true healing. For additional information, 407-414-6711. Remember to tune in next week for another healing message from the House of Light presents the Wisdom Cafe right here on 99.1 FM WQEE.